located directly behind me. Shall I go back again? Good morning. This is the time and place for the zoning cases hearing for December 8, 2010. My name is Edith Fuentes, and I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. We have 2 cases today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. Let me just quickly go through our hearing procedure. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if 4 required findings are present. Let me just get some water. You want to read, James? 1, that the strict application of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. 2, that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. 3, that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. And 4, that the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described, then the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices which were mailed to property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper, and posted on the city's website. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read a description of the application or the request, and then read reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. The case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and any interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak. Again, clearly stating both name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments, if desired, in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers within a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. I would like to emphasize that the date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the decision date, and the notice of appeal shall be filed with the Building and Safety Division located at Municipal Services Building, Room 101 of this building. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of these speaker forms which have been provided by the front door and submitted to our planning staff. I would like to also inform everyone that the official proceedings of the planning hearing officer's hearing are recorded on tape as part of the public record. Our first case is parking use permit 2010-001. Location is 1501 through 1515 South Brand Boulevard and 200 West Laurel Street. Applicant is Khan Consulting Inc. Owner is American Red Cross, and the case planner is Roger Kissel. This is an application for a parking use permit to allow the use of the parking structure located at 200 West Laurel Street for required parking for a private specialized school use located at 1501 South Brand Boulevard and 200 West Laurel Street in the CACG, Commercial Auto, Commercial General, and CAMS, Commercial General Medical Services zones, described as portions of lots 1 through 4, Block 6, Tropical Boulevard Tract, Lot C, Parcel Map 3028385. And let me just quickly go through some of the comments we have. Okay. I don't see any major concerns from any departments. We have some suggested conditions from community redevelopment and housing. You can get a copy of those. And then I think building and safety, the usual comply with building code requirements. Okay, Roger?
Good morning, Ms. Fuentes. The applicant is proposing a total of 1,372 square feet of private specialized school use in the existing American Red Cross building located at 1501 through 1515 South Brand Boulevard without providing the number of required minimum parking spaces. A parking use permit application is requested to allow the parking structure at 200 West Laurel Street to be used for the required off-street parking spaces for the school use. The majority of the 17,210 square foot building located at 1501, 1515 South Brand is used for administrative offices for the American Red Cross. The site currently contains 50 parking spaces. The proposed conversion of office space to private specialized school use requires an additional 32 on-site parking spaces. These spaces are proposed at an off-site parking structure, 200 West Laurel Street, and thus approval of a parking use permit is required. Approval of a parking use permit where off-site parking or shared parking is proposed require 10 findings to be made. Staff believes these findings can be made in a positive manner and recommends approval of the project. The parking structure where the off-site parking is proposed is part of the Glendale Memorial Hospital and Health Center campus. Based on the city's parking standards, the hospital is required to provide a minimum of 637 parking spaces. The campus as a whole contains 1,486 parking spaces, and this includes 1,295 spaces in the parking structure located at 200 West Laurel. Off-street parking is a permitted accessory use in the CG/MS zone, the zone in which the parking structure is located. All parking spaces within the structure are located within 550 feet of the entrance to the Red Cross building. Given the amount of parking and the relatively few parking spaces required for the school use, the off-site parking in the parking structure will be available. No changes to the design, location, size, or operating characteristics of the existing parking structure are proposed as a result of the project. No valet parking is proposed. Surrounding land uses, including the hospital and medical offices, commercial uses, auto-related uses, and some multifamily residential uses are generally compatible with a parking structure use. The surrounding area is mostly commercially zoned, and future development in the area will likely include a large commercial component, and this is also compatible with the existing parking structure. The operation of the existing parking structure has not been a nuisance in the past to the surrounding area. The Neighborhood Services Division has no outstanding code violations related to the parking structure, either with noise or other nuisance issues. No violations have been issued. The police and fire departments, as well as neighborhood services, did not express any concerns related to this request. And again, staff believes that the 10 findings can be made in a positive manner and recommends approval of the parking use permit. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I was looking at the comment here about operating without a zoning use certificate. Is that something that has been taken care of or will be taken care of?
It will be taken care of.
With this application.
They couldn't
Issue.
receive a zoning use certificate without rectifying the parking issue.
Okay. And I'm hoping that the applicant will address the issue how the students will be directed to use the allotted parking spaces. Okay, thank you very much, Roger. And to present the case, Mr. Rodney Khan.
Good morning, Ms. Fuentes.
Good morning.
My name is Rodney Khan. My offices are located at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 403, here in the city of Glendale. I'd like to start off my presentation, and I will certainly answer the questions that you posed, but giving a little bit of history about the American Red Cross, because I think it's relevant to our case here today. One of the primary purposes the Red Cross has as an objective is to provide relief for victims of disaster in this country and abroad, and to assist with disaster preparedness. I could go on about the 85-year history about the Glendale Crescenta Valley chapter and how it has responded in our community to everything from single-family fires to major earthquakes, and they've done an outstanding job over the years. Both in 1987, the Glendale Crescenta Valley chapter moved to this facility, which is at 1501 South Brand Boulevard. And just a couple years later, there was the College Hills fire. There was a number of different activities that they've responded to over the years. But to focus on this site itself, if I can approach,
Sure.
I'd like to do that. As Mr. Kiesel pointed out in his presentation, the existing building is on the corner of Laurel and South Brand, the southwest corner. It's about 17,500 square feet approximately and consists of 2 stories. It's always been home to the American Red Cross, and it has a large component to it that predominantly sits vacant unless there is an emergency. So on the first floor, on the north side of the building, you have the American Red Cross offices. You have lobby, You have their administrative offices as you go back, and that's this section here. On the west side of the building is where IDT is partnering with the Red Cross and taking a portion of the building. And this area here is IDT, Integrated Digital Technologies. Wanted to make sure I said that correctly. And so what happens here is there's an entry off of Brand Boulevard, and there is a large classroom here. There is a smaller classroom to the west of that, some administrative offices. You still have a little bit of American Red Cross where they're keeping their radio equipment, and then you have a classroom to the rear along with some other administrative offices. That's the ground floor. The second floor consists of emergency operations centers, which, as you know from the city here, they're only used when they're being activated. So there's an EOC that they have. They also have a board of directors meeting room, which meets once a month, the board of directors. And they also have disaster supply room, and they have a small area where, if emergency dorm room, where if they needed to put a family or two to stay temporarily because of some fire, earthquake, or et cetera, that could take place. But for the most part, that second floor is predominantly not used. It's primarily the first floor. We are proposing, as Mr. Kiesel stated, to use, it's about 8% of the building, about 1,372 square feet for private specialized school use. IDT, they train students in computers, in nurse assistance, online studies, and what's something called blended learning, and disaster training. So there's a whole program that they have. IDT has 5 full-time employees that serve approximately 35 students in a day for the entire day. And they operate Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., Saturday 8:30 to 5, and they're closed on Sunday. Just for your knowledge, the American Red Cross operates predominantly Monday through Friday from about 8:30 to 4:30 or 5. So that entire building, that's the way it is used. Mr. Kiesel talked about the parking on site. To the south of our building, about 12 years ago, the American Red Cross purchased that lot and introduced 38 parking spaces. On their site, if you want to say the building site proper, they also have approximately 12 spaces. And the reason I say approximately is they actually have more than that, but some of them are in a tandem configuration. So we just are counting the one space and not the both. So we have a total of 50 on-site parking spaces. Those 50 on-site parking spaces, although they do not meet what the code requires, they meet what the objectives or what the requirements are for the school and the Red Cross. Many of the students that come to IDT, the classes take anywhere from a minimum of 3 hours to a maximum of about 7 hours in a given day. So it's not a lot of turnover. You have people that are coming there, that are parked, and that can be accommodated. So if you figure if you had 35 students and you had 5 instructors, that's about 40. And the American Red Cross has 5 approximately full-time employees and maybe a couple volunteers. So we could accommodate the actual use of the building in our on-site parking. But we also understand the code says we need 32 additional parking spaces. And I have a little exhibit that I've prepared for you. And what this exhibit shows, and I'll give this to you, is the proximity of the American Red Cross and the parking structure for Glendale Memorial.
Thank you.
The Glendale Memorial Hospital has had a long-standing relationship with American Red Cross. In fact, for the past 23, 24 years that they've been adjacent to each other, they've had a very strong, good, ongoing relationship. In fact, past approvals that the city has given has required that Glendale Memorial, and it was more of a handshake than it was documented, provide up to 50 parking spaces in their parking structures. Well, they've always been very accommodating. In fact, when we went to them to ask them for a letter, which we've submitted to the file, could we have 32 parking spaces? They said, is 32 enough? And we said, well, why not just 35 then? I mean, any amount they would be willing to provide to us because there's such a strong relationship. And as Roger pointed out, there's about 849 extra parking spaces that Glendale Memorial has that the city code does not require. We obviously agree with staff's conclusions or staff's findings as it relates to the 10 findings that need to be made. So unless you'd like, I'd prefer not to go over each 10 because what Roger pointed out, we do agree with. We think it is consistent. We think it can be provided, etc. I do want to get around to answering your questions, though, before I started my presentation. First of all, how would we notify the students? We're really going to notify the students twofold. One is when they apply for a class or a program, part of the paperwork that they fill out, they will be given information that says parking will be provided either on-site or can be provided also at 200 West Laurel in the Glendale Memorial parking structure. That's one way. And they'll have to sign that. They'll have to sign that they received that. The second way we'll do it is we will actually provide inside of our building, we will post it as well. Kind of like you post your agendas to make people aware of the fact that this is a public hearing today. We'll do the same thing, where we permanently have it posted that all IDT clients, students, however you want to classify them, are to park either on-site in our parking structure or at the Glendale Memorial parking structure. And that's the way we think we can make sure that, one, they get it when they first sign up, and two, they see it every time they walk into the building. What was your second question you had? I remember that one.
I also forgot.
Okay, you can, if you remember, you can tell me. A few other things, and then I'll wrap up my presentation.
Neighborhood services. I was talking about the zoning use certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Roger addressed
Yes.
that. As soon, if we are successful here today, then we would immediately, there's really two things we need to do. One is the zoning use certificate, which we would immediately apply for. And the second is if this is granted, we would need to provide a lease arrangement with Glendale Memorial Hospital for those 35 additional parking spaces as well. So those would be the two things that we would follow through on our end. Not only have we reviewed the findings and agree with them, but we've also reviewed the draft conditions of approval as well. And there were 12 of them, and we would be able to comply with all of them.
Okay.
There are none that we are concerned with. With me today, I have Ron Farina, who's the Executive Director of the Red Cross, and I have Juan Rodriguez, who is the Chief Executive of IDT. So I'll conclude my presentation. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I'm not sure who's going to answer or who may be able. Will you be issuing some kind of a vehicle ID that this is an IDT student? Because I want to make sure they're identified just in case they start parking all over the neighborhood or within the residential area. So.
Yeah, and if I may address that, Ms. Fuentes, we certainly could. One of the reasons that I gave the time frame for the classes is if you park in the area along Brand Boulevard or off of Laurel, or I think it's Eucalyptus to the south, it's 2-hour parking. It's stated and it's restricted that it's 2-hour parking. The classes that are offered are between 3 hours and 7 hours. So unless someone is wanting to get a
Cutting
parking
class.
ticket or cutting class, it's not in their best interest to do something like that. But on top of that, yes, we can also issue.
And I think knowing that Glendale Memorial Hospital parking, they do charge for parking. I'm not sure a lot of the students will be really using those parking spaces. They're going to try and go for whatever's free or wherever it's free. So
We
I
can,
just want to make sure
Sure.
they're aware, they know, they're identified, so they don't take away parking spaces from some of those businesses and residential zone.
and we hear you, and I think that's a good point. The other thing, too, is that potentially we could park some of the employees at the Glendale Memorial parking structure, because we'll have an arrangement with them as
Right.
well, and then have the students or clients park on site.
Okay.
Thank you very
Good.
much.
Thank you. Mr. Ron Farina?
Good morning, Ms. Fuentes.
Good morning.
My name is Ron Farina. I'm the Executive Director of the American Red Cross Glendale Crescenta Valley Chapter at 1501 South Brand Boulevard, Glendale. Just here today to express my support of this because this is a good blend of our two organizations based on our availability of space and also the hours of our operation and our particular needs. So we see this as a positive move and something that we hope that the city will bless.
Okay. How long have you been the executive director?
I've been the executive director since May of 1995,
That's when.
and before that I had 18 years with the Los Angeles chapter.
Wow. Okay. I've gone through some trainings and blood thing in there, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Juan Rodriguez.
Went through a little cold, so.
That's
My name is Juan Rodriguez. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of IDT Corp. And we definitely are in favor of this. We think that it's a good blend with the Red Cross, being that we have actually serviced the National Red Cross in many areas for many years. We actually have designed their web systems and donation management systems and registration systems for many of the chapters nationwide. And the reason that we wanted to be there is so that monies that we actually pay to a landlord, at least their benefit, they benefit from it. I did wanted to address one of the questions that Ronnie had probably couldn't answer. It was about how the students actually know where to park. They actually get an email where it states exactly where they're going to park. And we typically, because we deal with high-level corporations, including you, we actually train the city of Glendale, we actually pay for their parking. So we are always responsible of paying for our students' parking, since they pay us, a good amount of money for that particular training, that is specialized training. So that's one thing that we do. So if they're going to park there for 5 days, we will actually take care of the whole payment for them. They wouldn't have to do anything. Does that answer one
you
of your
validate.
questions? Well, basically validate, everything
Okay.
for them.
So how you have 5 staff or personnel?
Yeah, we have.
That include you
That
or
includes myself. I'm actually
administrator?
also a trainer. Our training is very untypical from the regular training because it is actually either done on site or at our site or at the client site or even online. And a lot of the people that actually come here, they love coming to Glendale. They love actually staying at the hotels close to the Americana. Because they actually are corporate students traveling from all over the United States to Glendale. So
So how many other offices?
we actually have facilities in Santa Ana, Orange County. We also have a partner facility in Woodland Hills, and we have partner facilities all throughout the United States as how would I call them? They're more like facilities that we can use based on our client needs.
And how long has IDT?
IDT has been in business since 1995, and
Same as Ron.
actually we started their website. We won an award for the American Red Cross website almost 15 years ago.
Wow.
And that's how we had met in the past. And I used to be part of the board of directors for the Red Cross. No longer, I didn't want any conflict of interest, but I wanted them to benefit since our current landlord was actually raising our lease. I saw an empty space, and I wanted to help also.
Yeah, I think it's a good partnership, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in support or in opposition to this application? Seeing none. Closing comments, Mr. Khan? Nothing. Roger?
I don't have
Nothing?
anything.
Very good. Okay. I'm going to go ahead, take this case under submission, and we'll let you know. Thank you very much for coming. Our next case is variance 2010-012. Location is 1209 Cottage Grove Avenue. Applicant is Khan Consulting, Inc. Owners are Bernard and Grace Inchauspe, trustee. Case planner is Roger. This is an application for a variance to allow the location of a split-faced concrete block metal railing fence wall on the street side property line. Previously, there was a chain link fence at the same location. The fence was removed and the proposed block metal railing fence and wall was constructed without a permit on the street side property line located at 1209 Cottage Grove Avenue in the R1 Low Density Residential Zone, Floor Area District 2, described as Lot 3, tract number 7436, Glendale, California. And let me just quickly go through some of the comments. From a neighbor across the street, Roseanne Phillips, basically in favor or in support of the proposed application. So you won the monthly nicest yard in Glendale award, right? Okay. We also have an email from one of the neighbors. Oh, Ute. Okay. In support of the application again. Neighborhood Services, existing code enforcement case. And from engineering, they're just basically reminding us that no portion of the wall or any of its footings and foundations is allowed to be located within the public right-of-way. Okay, no more concerns or issues. Mr. Roger Kisa.
Good morning again, Ms. Fuentes. The next case before you this morning is a variance request to legalize a wall located within the street side setback area. The wall replaced a previously installed chain link fence. The proposed wall, which is located within the street side setback area, is currently existing and was built to replace the fence, the chain link fence. The proposed wall is located on the southern property line between the existing residence and the driveway leading to the garage, and then runs from the southern property line north to the existing garage. The wall will enclose the yard between the existing house and the detached garage. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow the wall within the street side setback area. Approval of a variance requires 4 findings of fact to be made. Staff believes that only 2 of these findings can be made in a positive manner. One of the objectives of the city's zoning ordinance is to regulate structures to protect residential land uses from harmful encroachment by incompatible land uses. Additionally, the intent of prohibiting walls within the street side setback area is to promote a pleasant streetscape by requiring landscaping between the public right-of-way and any wall separating this area from a private yard. The proposed wall complies with the intent of the ordinance. The wall protects the private yard of the subject site from the public street and sidewalk area, and it also promotes a pleasant streetscape through the use of materials. It's constructed of split-face concrete block and metal railings, and is open. The metal railings allow landscape views into the interior of the lot. The property owner's expectation that a wall could be built within the street side setback area is reasonable, given that a chain link fence was located in approximately the same location for many years. Additionally, there are 4 other properties in the surrounding block within the block of the subject site, which also have fences and walls within the street side setback area. However, this reasonable expectation is not an unnecessary hardship, because neighborhood services section actually notified the property owner early on in the construction of the wall that the location of the wall was in violation of the minimum street side setback requirements. The subject site is located on the northwest corner of Cottage Grove and Briar Lane. The lot is approximately 50 feet of frontage on Cottage Grove Avenue and 120 feet of frontage on Briar Lane. The lot is flat and is approximately 6,000 square feet. The topography of the site does not preclude installation of the wall outside of the street side setback area. The 50-foot lot width of the site, while it's not considered overly wide, is common in the area. Staff does not believe that the granting of the variance to allow the 6-foot-high wall will be detrimental to the public or injurious to the property. For many years, a chain link fence was located where the wall is currently proposed. The subject site, as well as the surrounding neighborhood, has lived with a wall or fence at this location for many years without detrimental impacts. And several properties, as I previously noted, in the surrounding area also have walls in a similar location. Also, from an aesthetic perspective, the proposed wall will not be detrimental to the subject site or surrounding neighborhood, particularly compared to the previous chain link fence. The wall that's existing now is aesthetically more pleasing than the chain link fence it replaced. And finally, the granting of the variance to allow the approximately 6-foot-high wall will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. Prohibiting fences and walls within the street side setback area balances the desire of providing a pleasant streetscape with allowing for secure and private rear yards. The wall has a concrete block base and pilasters with open black metal railings between the pilasters. The design of the wall is such that it does not produce a blank face. It's not a blank wall from the public right-of-way. And landscaping within the rear yard of the subject site can be viewed from the street. The proposed wall, or the existing wall, as intended, will provide security and some privacy for the rear yard. Again, staff believes that only 2 of the 4 findings can be made, the latter 2, in a positive manner, and therefore recommends denial of the variance. That concludes my presentation. Additionally, I would like to add, we do have a French interpreter in the audience in case there
I have
are
some questions.
on difficulty communicating. So
Just a quick, was this brought to us because of a code enforcement
yes,
citation?
it was.
Okay.
Yes.
How long ago was the notice?
It's probably been about 6 months.
Okay.
It's been a while.
So they responded within 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, they Neighborhood Services, it's my understanding, caught the violation early on. It's taken a while to process the application.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Rodney Khan.
Once again, good morning, Ms. Fuentes.
Good morning.
My name is Rodney Kahn, and my offices are located at 1111 North Brand Boulevard, Suite 403 here in the city of Glendale. As you mentioned, today we are seeking approval of a decorative, very aesthetically pleasing wall and fence to replace what was an existing chain link fence that was dilapidated and was falling down. The lot itself, the location, I should say itself, the fence wall is in the exact same location as the previous fence, which was there for many, many decades. The height of the wall is approximately the same as the old dilapidated fence. So overall, it's gone in a much, much better direction, both from an aesthetic point of view and from a safety point of view. Sitting on the lot right now is a single-family house built in 1926. It contains 2 bedrooms and 1 bath in about 1,400 square feet. And as you can see from the site plan, there's also a detached garage. The fence or wall in question is only for a portion of the street side setback area. It's not for the entire length. And if you have a pointer, I see the site plan is very high. I could point out to you where that is.
It's right over here, actually. Look down.
Here.
Thank you.
We're hiding.
The area, the front of the house is on Cottage Grove Avenue. This is Briar Lane. The wall that we're speaking of is only for this portion, which is approximately about 25 feet or so. And then it returns back to the detached garage. So it's a small backyard area that they have that they'd like to maintain that security, that safety, and that aesthetic feel to it. And as you could see from the wall or from the photographs itself, not only is it predominantly open, but it's also landscaped behind it, and there is a walkway and parkway with landscaping, and there's also landscaping for a majority of the lot. Just that portion of the wall is what we're talking about here today. After reviewing and hearing the staff report and speaking with Mr. Kiesel, I can see that it was very much a struggle as to whether to recommend denial or recommend approval. It's very different. It's not usual to have findings made both a couple in favor and a couple against. So what I hope to do today is sway you in those two that Mr. Kiesel felt he could not make. As was also pointed out, my clients speak French. They speak French at home, and Bernard, who works at a French restaurant, speaks French at work as well. And so, very kindly, is it Elise? Elise has volunteered to act as an interpreter for us, and she comes, I think, from Glendale College, because we contacted the city and they put us in touch with her. So thank you to Elise for being here today to assist us in this hearing. The reason that I wanted to identify that as well, though, is from the very beginning, it was not clear to my clients as to what was taking place. They felt, and I think most people would probably feel, is that if an existing fence, which was falling down in a dilapidated condition, and they wanted to simply replace it in the same location and same height with something a little bit more sturdy and very aesthetically pleasing, that would cause any problems whatsoever. And when neighborhood services came out to their property while they were doing this wall/fence, the old fence had already been taken down. They had already constructed a good portion of the existing wall, and the neighborhood services person told them, don't put in the railings. It wasn't don't build the wall or the fence, it was don't put in the railings, which, whether I speak French or not, is confusing to me. Either you don't build the wall or you do build the wall. That's one thing. The second thing is there's been some confusion going back and forth between my clients and the city. And when I say confusion, there was discussions, there was meetings taking place that, one, a variance may not be required, then a variance was required, then it was to submit the paperwork and pay the fees, and everything would be okay, and obviously everything is not okay because staff is recommending denial. So, as you can imagine, it's for someone whose first language is not English, this whole process would be confusing anyway. And so here today we're hoping to kind of figure out or bring to light some of that confusion so that we all understand. What I'd like to do is go over the findings if I can, because that's why we're here today. And I'll actually use some of staff's findings, because I agree with some of them. And even the first finding, I would simply go to, which is the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with general purposes and intent of the ordinance. I can go back and state what Roger has already said, which is basically that the wall complies with the intent of the ordinance, that the promotes a pleasant streetscape through the use of materials and openness, allowing views into the lot. The property owner's expectation, which probably anybody's expectation would be, that a wall could be located within the street side setback is reasonable, given that a chain link fence was there for many years. And then the only thing that kind of took this from a positive to a negative was that neighborhood services had come out and told them not to build that. And from our perspective, when it's not fully comprehended or explained to people as to what is taking place, why they should stop, why they should only stop on a portion of the wall and not the whole wall, and to have something for safety and security reasons to be down and have an exposed yard, I would argue that does create a practical difficulty. And I would argue that does create unnecessary hardship as it relates to my clients. The second item, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved. I'll go once again to the staff report, because I thought this was kind of interesting, and I don't think Roger did this intentionally, but he's here to speak for himself. It says there are no exceptional circumstances and conditions applicable to property that do not apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. But that's not the only finding. That's not the finding incomplete. That's a portion of the finding. The finding incomplete states that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property, but what was left out was or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. That's finding number 2. And if you look at that part, the part that was left out, the intended use or development of the property, I would argue the development of the property relates to the structures that exist on the site. What is the development on there? Well, one of the development issues or one of the development items relates to the walls and the fences along with the buildings and structures that have been developed on that site. And in that case, having said that, is there something unique? Well, absolutely. Something unique that's not applicable to other properties in the same zone or neighborhood was the other properties didn't have existing development, which is the fence that was dilapidated in the same location that was falling down that needed to be replaced. The third item, third and fourth, I couldn't agree with Roger more. The granting of variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the neighborhood. As was stated, a chain link fence was located there. The neighbors, as you've seen, have written in to say that they not only support this, but this is a good thing for that neighborhood. It's not a bad thing. From an aesthetic perspective, the proposed wall will not be detrimental to the subject site or surrounding neighborhood. And then lastly, once again, I'd agree with Roger as it relates to the fourth finding. It will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance for a variety of reasons. The wall has a concrete base, it has open pilasters, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it does take into consideration what's going on in the neighborhood where there are similar conditions, but I would also argue those similar conditions in the neighborhood that has walls and fences, this fence and wall is much more aesthetically pleasing. I shouldn't say much more. I should say even more aesthetically pleasing than those existing walls and fences. So this is certainly an asset to this area. Anyway, let me look at my notes real quick and make sure I haven't forgotten anything. We ask, obviously, that you take all of that into consideration. One of the things I always look at, and I know you look at more than I look at, is how does the city or the community benefit from this wall? And I would argue that the community benefits greatly from it, not only for the aesthetic reasons, but for all the other reasons I stated in my presentation. And then I also look at the flip side. How would the community benefit from removing this wall? And to be honest with you, I can't think of one reason how the city or the community would benefit from them having to remove, to destroy or damage or relocate this wall. It would make absolutely no sense whatsoever. I truly believe this couple has done nothing wrong. I think they replaced the old fence with a beautiful similar one for the area, and I think it's certainly an asset for the city of Glendale. I'll conclude my remarks and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Let's talk about your emphasis on development on the property, structure that previously existed on the property, and the uniqueness of the fact that there was a chain link fence on the property. I only have one question.
Sure.
Do you know for a fact if the chain link fence had a permit, or was it permitted to be built where it was located?
This is the way that I would, looking through the files, the home was built in the 1920s, so it would predate your permits.
Does the chain link fence look like it was built a long
time ago? In fact, my clients have lived in this house for many decades. It's not been
I know,
this-
I wanted to ask them how long they have been, or they have lived on the property.
Sure.
So.
If it's okay with you, I would ask
Sure.
Elise to come forward, and then
Because that's one thing that I would, if we can find anything from previous records where the chain link fence was shown, and it would look like it was part of a previous approval or permit, then you have a very good point in there. But other than that, I agree with the case planner that I'm also struggling with those two findings. So let me ask them.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Let me just interject real quickly. One of the letters that you received from
The neighbor?
Mr. Baum, I believe acknowledges that the chain link fence was up for a number of decades. I
know.
I don't know the exact language,
I
but
don't even know how long she's been a neighbor.
yeah, I don't know how long she's been a neighbor either.
Okay, thank you. Bernard and Grace,
Is it
maybe
okay if I
we
have
can take
everyone
them
come forward
yes together.
so that everybody-
So I'm just going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves, including our interpreter. So give me your name and address for the record.
My name is Bernard Chospe. We live for 42 years and a half in the same location and 12
Okay, hold on. I will ask you the question. Let's name and address for the record.
Bernard Chospe, 1209 Carriage Grove.
Okay,
Grace and Chospe, 1209 Carriage Grove.
okay. And
Could you speak into the mic
Yes,
a little
speak.
bit? Thanks.
so they all can see you. Okay, and I'm going to ask our interpreter to fill out one of these forms when you're done. Okay, Bernard or Grace, how long have you lived on the property?
Since May 1968.
May of 1968. And I'm assuming when you moved in there, the chain link fence was
Yes.
existing.
Chenlik was there.
Did you do any other improvement on the yard or any structure in the house since you moved there? Nothing.
Nothing.
This is the first time.
Yes.
See, we don't need you there. That's okay. You can stay there. Personally, do you know Ute, one of your neighbors, Ute Baum? Okay. Okay. And the other neighbor, I think, was here.
Do you want the other neighbor's name?
I think I mentioned it.
You
on
did.
The record.
Yeah, I
you
have
did.
it here.
Okay, good. And so when you hired the contractor or whoever did your fence, I'm assuming he just did it over the weekend or a few days.
1 week.
He didn't show you any permit or anything, no application,
Because
nothing.
the other one was falling down and he came to give us estimate and then he says,
Did he represent himself to you as a general contractor or a concrete? Would you mind giving us his name and telephone number so we can follow up with?
Ray Reed? No, I don't know.
You don't have to do it now. You can give it to us later on.
Okay.
Because we're trying to track down some of these contractors that are doing jobs without necessary approval and permits. So. How high is the fence, Rodney, if you know? I can't see the drawing.
It's okay. I have a copy here.
It's not quite 6 feet.
It's shown to be 5 feet 11 and a quarter inches, so approximately 6 feet.
6 feet.
Yeah, and it has.
I'm trying to get to the neighborhood services officer's comment about if you don't put the railings, you don't need a permit. How high is the concrete portion on the bottom?
2 feet.
18 inches? 2 feet? It doesn't show here. So 2
Looks
feet?
to be a couple blocks.
Not 18 inches. Couple blocks would be 16, plus the copying or something. So, and he is right. If you had kept the lower portion to 18 inches, then you don't really need anything.
There should be photographs that Mr. Kiesel will show.
I know, but it doesn't show the dimension. That's okay.
It looks like it's like 2.5 or 3 blocks.
Yeah, 8, 16, 24. Yeah, 3 blocks would be 24. So. Okay, this is a very tough case, really. Who was the code enforcement officer? Don't have a copy.
Off Offhand, I don't recall. I can get that information.
Okay, so, and the officer was there during construction, right? I'm assuming it's not finished. It's not finished because he said do not put the railings.
Inspector, you mean?
Il est venu quand on avait presque fini le mur, avant de mettre les rails.
Just before finishing.
Speak to the microphone.
He came to tell them just before finishing the wall, before they put in the...
So it wasn't finished yet,
The wall was finished,
The wall
but
was
the
finished,
railing
yeah.
was not.
but the railing was not there. And so the contractor went ahead and finished the job.
Yeah.
You already paid him,
Not
I'm
safe.
assuming,
It's
also,
never
right?
open. It was not safe.
Okay, so 40... "42 years." I was just trying to see, had they done any other work or construction on the house, they would know they need a permit to do anything, and they would have.
Didn't know that we need a permit for that. We really did innocently.
I know. Okay, that's your copy, I'm assuming. Okay, is there anything else you would like to say before we end the public hearing? Go ahead, you first. Come into the microphone so they can...
We have two gates, and we didn't change the gate. The gate going from the house to sidewalk is the same thing, and then another little gate near the garage is the same thing. We change only the wall from the gate to the gate. Between sidewalk and the house, it's a gate. That gate did not replace. We did not replace. It was there and it's there.
Okay,
The portion from the house to the sidewalk. We have a gate there like this, vertical.
okay.
And the other little gate to go to the garage, same thing. We didn't change either.
Okay. Grace, you want to say something else? To the microphone. To the microphone, yeah.
The only thing I want to know when we have to take that sign off from there.
Ugly sign.
After the appeal period's done.
Oh, okay. Just I want to know that because it's very embarrassing to me.
Believe me, it may take longer than you really expect. Okay, anything else? Thank you very much for coming.
very much.
Okay, and thank you, Miss Interpreter. Okay, closing comments, Mr. Khan?
You had mentioned in terms of documentation, Ms. Fuentes, as to whether the findings could be made. And as mentioned, in 1968, they moved in and the fence was there. So 68, I was born in 66 and I'm 44, I think. So I'm trying to figure that out. I think it's 42 years.
42.
And that means it had been there before they moved in. So we're looking at probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 decades. So 50 to 60 plus years. So I would be surprised if any of the city records or files showed any permits that were that
I know,
old.
that's why, one of the reasons I was asking if they had done any other construction or improvements on the property is, it would show
Right.
something in relationship to the chain link fence. Okay.
So anyway, needless to say, as was shown, there was no ill intent. It was simply the intent to improve not only the safety, the security, but also the aesthetics of the wall and the fence, and also of the neighborhood. And I mean, I think that's an important component to also include is what is the impact on the neighborhood? And the impact in this case has been very positive, as you can see from the letters of support and as you can see from the photographs as well. So once again, we hope that you can find it within yourself to approve this, and thank you for your consideration here today.
Okay. Roger?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for coming, and I'm closing the public hearing at 10:40 in the morning.